Support for Disrupted comes from the Connecticut Office of Film, Television, and Digital Media.
Black Americans make up about 14% of the U.S. population, but only 3% of U.S. businesses are Black-owned. That's according to the 2023 Annual Business Survey. It's conducted by the U.S. Census Bureau and the National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics. Black Americans are vastly underrepresented as business owners, but many of today's entrepreneurs hope to inspire a new generation to close that gap. From Connecticut Public Radio, this is Disrupted. I'm Kalila Brown-Dean. August is National Black Business Month, and this hour, we're talking with Black business leaders in Connecticut about finding success in fields where they don't always see themselves represented. Later in the show, we'll hear one real estate developer's approach to building capital. But up first, we're talking with two entrepreneurs who work in very different fields. Karin Smith is co-owner of Kindred Thoughts Bookstore. It's an independent, Black-owned bookstore in Bridgeport. And Vincencia V. Adusei is owner and founder of VASE Construction based in New Haven. Thank you both for joining us on Disrupted.
Thank you for having us.
You know, both of you have had tremendous success in the spaces that you're working in. And often people see the outcome of success and overlook the journey that it takes to get there. And I know that for the two of you working in spaces that people who look like you are very underrepresented, I think our listeners need to be reminded that there is a journey that is unique somewhat for entrepreneurs, but particularly for the two of you. Karin, let's start with you. What was the journey of becoming the co-owner of an independent Black-owned bookstore in Bridgeport?
Great question. I would say for me, the journey actually started decades ago. And it started on Water Street in Bridgeport, where I went to a bookstore called Zuri's Bookstore. And it was the first Black-owned Black experience, if you will, in terms of a bookstore. And it was in our city. And it was beautiful. You could walk in and every sensor just kind of went off, visual, audio, the incense that you would smell when you walked in. It was just really a cool place to be. And so for me, that began my journey of I want to own a bookstore. And then later on in life, how we fall into different things and we do those things that we need to do to, pay the mortgage and do all those things. It just became a back burner for me. Always still loved books and loved to read. But during COVID, I lived alone. I had the realization that cats don't talk back. They come to you when they're in need and they're hungry, but after that, they don't want to be bothered. And so I needed some sort of human contact. And so using Zoom, I decided I would start a book club. And so I selected Kamala Harris's book because she had then been selected as the VP for the Democratic ticket. And I put it on Facebook and I had maybe about 5 folks show up and I said, okay, we're going to do this. And it started there. And from there, we did a book a quarter and we put it on Eventbrite and we had people that dialed in from all over the globe. And eventually, we started to do pop-ups in Bridgeport and we realized there had not been a bookstore in Bridgeport in well over 10 years. And people were like, is there a bookstore in Bridgeport? Is there a bookstore in Bridgeport? And we kept saying, no, not yet. And then finally someone asked, and I had taken on a partner at that point, and we decided that we would do a brick and mortar. Mm-hmm. And so we went into a very, very quaint, small space, and that's where our journey began.
Karin talked about this love that she had that she put on the back burner, right? Maybe I'll get to it. Maybe I'll discover it when I have time, when all of the things align to have this perfect moment. And as both of you know, as entrepreneurs, there's never really a perfect moment. There's the moment when you say, I have to do this or I'm going to do it, even if it doesn't necessarily align. What was the journey for you for founding and leading this construction company?
For those of you that don't know my background, I grew up in Ghana, West Africa. My family were in construction. They built highways back home in Ghana. And I remember being a little girl and just loving to see what they were doing. I'd see my mom on a pickup truck. But I was very, very young, maybe 10, 9, but I can remember. So fast forward now, finished my master's. I've started this company as a consulting firm. Fred McKinney brought me on board to help him plan construction expo. Now I'm trying not to get into construction because I think my whole entire family is in construction, but everything I was doing in consulting kept bringing me back to construction. And then right after that, one of the events, I met Karen Dubois Walton at one of the events at the casino, the construction expo. And during that time, Karen also, for New Haven Housing Authority, had an RFP out, which was a technical assistance support service for small businesses. Again, many of those businesses were contractors. I was like, wow, I'm trying not to go into construction, but everything I'm doing as a consultant keep bringing me back to construction. So for several years, maybe in the beginning, 3 or 4 years, as a consultant, I'll work with so many smaller contractors. I think I would have probably talked to over 500 to 1,000 small businesses that were in construction. And I'll talk to the business owners and I'll try to understand what is the biggest challenges that you have. I learned that every single smaller contractors, there was always that top 10 challenges that they had. Every one of them, it always fell within that top 10 challenges. And through that effort, I'll give you an example. One of the challenges they had was not understanding the blueprints that they were reading. And therefore, they could not estimate correctly. And therefore, they were not bidding correctly. And they were either underbidding or overbidding because they were not understanding it. So at one point, I remember talking to a contractor and saying, you're not understanding the plans to bid correctly. Maybe I can help you. So I remember just trying to understand the blueprints, maybe took a couple of seminars, but I picked up pretty quickly. I think it's just in my blood. I don't know. I just picked it up very quickly. So I taught myself how to read blueprints, and I'll go on to help and teach a lot of the smaller contractors how to do it. Then after a while, I started teaching myself how to estimate because I also realized they weren't estimating correctly. So I'll teach myself and I'll take, again, a few seminars, and I'll go back and I'll start teaching them. Not realizing that there's a bigger plan for me. I had no idea at the time because at this point, I'm still a contractor. I'm still a consultant. So I did that for about 3 years, and then something unusual happened, which is one of the top 10 things that I could not help. I just simply could not help. And one day, a couple of contractors I was working with were supposed to bid a job that I helped them to estimate. We worked on it for maybe a couple of weeks or so. And at the end, they told me that they couldn't bid the job. I said, what do you mean you can't bid the job? So I don't have the bond. Well, go get the bond. Well, they couldn't get the bond because, it's hard to get the bond if you have things like bankruptcy, child support, liquidity issues. Those are certain things that prevent smaller contractors. And whatever the past or the history is, they were really wonderful people, really good at their skills, but they just couldn't get the bond. And I think at the time, if you're doing work with government agencies, especially municipal housing, any job, I think over $75,000 or more, most of them require bonding. So I realized that a lot of the companies I was working with, they couldn't get past that threshold because they didn't have the ability to get the bond. So I had to make up my mind at that pivotal moment. Am I going to spend the rest of my life trying to help smaller contractors? And they could not do this. But by that time, I'd already fallen in love with the industry. I love the project. I love estimating. I love getting the project together, telling these folks how to manage the project. So it came a time where there was an opportunity, and I was helping a couple of subcontractors, and they couldn't get the bond. I went to my insurance company and I said, can you get me the bond? I already did the estimates. Everything is all set. I know these folks. I know they can do the job. I'll just pick the job, and then they will just manage the job. And my insurance company told me, well, V, we'll give you the bond, but if anything goes wrong, we're coming after you. And that's not an insurance, right? Bond is different. That's like you are, if the job fails, they're coming after you, your asset, everything that you have. So at that particular moment, I was no longer a consultant, because as a consultant, I can tell you, hey, make sure you do this. But as a contractor, when I have 100% on the line, I am not asking. I am telling you, you got to get this done, and we have to do it this way. And just like that, I went from a consultant to a contractor, and I loved it ever since, and I never looked back. And I think it's because that was my calling, and everything that I did for several years, learning the skills, talking to different disciplines of the industry, and then ultimately having the business that manages all of that together. Somehow, God sort of showed me the disciplines.
Karin, as V is talking about her journey, I hear a couple of things. One, I hear the need to be open, that even if it's not the path that you set out for yourself, sometimes that calling pulls you into that path.
Yes.
I also heard that you have to be open to seeing yourself in a different way. So V started seeing herself as helping others, and then said, well, wait a minute. All the things that I'm teaching them to do are things that I can do. And even with that kind of motivation, some of those barriers, you are working in an industry where, one, the nature of publishing has changed. The nature of being an author has changed. And the nature of a community held space, which for me, Kindred Thoughts is a community held space of what that means to do that. All those barriers in publishing and owning a bookstore to make a lot of people say, it's not even worth it at this point. Like, let me just, I love books. I'll continue to read and bring people together. But to take that step to say, yes, I deserve to do this. What would you say has been one of the biggest challenges for you of working in that space? And how do you work through it?
Wow, that's a lot to unpack there. So we're located in Bridgeport. We're located downtown. We initially had moved into that quaint little space, and we outgrew it. It was so small that if two people were in the space, either myself or my partner would have to step into the hallway, because mind you, it was still at the back end of COVID, and we wanted to ensure people's safety. So we moved downtown. Both my business partner and I, his name is Derek Tompkins. Shout out to Derek. We're from Bridgeport. We're native to the city. We both lived elsewhere, but came back, under different circumstances. He happens to be my cousin-in-law, just for full context. The arcade was bustling when we were kids. I mean, you could go into the arcade and you could get an album, you could get sneakers, you could get your hair done. Like, the arcade is the second oldest enclosed mall structure in Connecticut. So it's historic and it's beautiful. And right now it's relatively vacant. And we have so many transplants into Bridgeport due to COVID that people don't even know it's there. So that has created its own barrier. And then, as I stated at the beginning, the city has not had a bookstore. Now, it is the most populous city in the state of Connecticut. And in my opinion, not having a bookstore is a sin and a shame. So, we gladly said, yes, let's do this. But it has been a challenge in the era of, declining indie bookstores, in the era of where Amazon is king, in an era where they being Amazon, will undercut the price of books in order to ensure the sale. So people really have to, A, have a love for books, and B, they really have to want to support an indie bookstore. And that's where I think the beauty of Kindred Thoughts comes in, because we are niche. Again, we're Black owned and we're Black themed. But you can also go to our website and get any book that's ever been published. So you're not without an opportunity to get the book that you want, that you desire, that fits your genre and your interest. But we still run into the fact that people say, didn't know you guys were here. And it's like, okay, but we're here. So if you can't shop today, hopefully you'll come back and shop tomorrow. We also offer different, types of workshops. So, we've had someone come in talk about mental health during the holidays for Menopause Day, which is in October. I happen to know that personally. Did a workshop on menopause. We had someone come in and speak to autism. So we consider ourselves to be a community bookstore. So we want to also help to, meet the needs of the community. And so, love to sell you a book, but we also want to make sure that we can engage our community. We had our most recent book club. It's Kindred Book Club. It's member led. And it's 50-50, in the spectrum between, people of color and those that are not. Mostly female. We definitely want to make sure, that we see more men reading. It's sexy. But, we try to meet the challenge by just having a diverse product offering.
That was Karin Smith, co-owner of Kindred Thoughts Bookstore in Bridgeport. Adusei is owner and founder of VASE Construction in New Haven. Coming up, we'll talk about why it's important to recognize National Black Business Month. And later, a real estate developer explains how he was inspired by the Chicago skyline. This is Disrupted. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Disrupted. I'm Kalila Brown-Dean. This hour, we're talking with Black entrepreneurs in Connecticut about their challenges and successes in honor of National Black Business Month. Vincencia V. Adusei is owner and founder of VASE Construction based in New Haven. And Karin Smith is co-owner of Kindred Thoughts Bookstore. It's an independent, Black-owned bookstore in Bridgeport. Here's more of our conversation. Many of us know the experience of showing up in spaces where we are not always seen there, and how that can become a barrier and a challenge, where people will question not necessarily your worth, but your impact and your value because you show up very differently than what people expect. Has that been a challenge for you working in that space here in Connecticut? Or have you been able to say, yes, I may not look like what you expect, but what I am providing will exceed any expectation you may have?
I also have to reference my home in Ghana, because I don't think I can say that I'm able to go through this journey here without that background. I thought it was actually normal that women could be in the construction industry. It was only as I became more successful here that I realized that was very unique, because I was getting asked, "How are you in the construction industry?" It just became the norm questions that I realized that, it's not very typical. But for me, when I made the transition into going into construction management, I did notice that I was the only female construction management firm here that I knew of at the time. And I also realized that whenever I'd go to meetings, I was genuinely the only woman, but also the only Black. And I don't think it really fazed me. The only time I think it fazed me was when people asked me that question. But when I go into meeting, I think I black those things out, because I didn't see that as a barrier obstacle watching my mom or my sisters. So for me, it was, I go into the meeting, yes, it's noticeable that there is no other woman. And especially as the company grew and grew, now we're managing millions of dollars of work. So the stakes are much higher. But it's still the same. I'm still typically finding myself to be the only woman or the only African Black in the space. It doesn't really. I don't know if it makes sense. I would love to see more women in the industry. That's number one. I think we're different. We bring a different perspective. We come in from maybe not to say a nurturing part, but that's just the way we are. And I see that in even the women that I know that are subcontractors, because sometimes we get together, we just talk about, how they're doing, how I'm doing, and even the staff members that work for VASE that are women. We just bring a different perspective. And I think that more representation in that management aspect will only make the industry better. I don't see it very often, but it's not something that is an effect when I'm working. Let's put it that way. But I do recognize that. And I think I've asked a few women that I've come across before, and I've said, why don't you go into construction management? Because I think you do really, really good at it. And I always get the same answer. I don't think this is for me. It's like, I think I may not get respected. And I said, but you don't know until you go into it. And again, there's certain things that I don't know. Somebody has to want to do it. But I just feel like women would do so good in that. So I do recognize that I am the only, well, at least that I know of, female construction management firm that is also Black here in Connecticut. If there's another one that please let me know. I'd love to talk to them. But that being said, more women should be in it. That being said, if we are in it, we should not let that be an obstacle of being in it. We should just love the trade. We should just figure out how we make it better, and we should just do it every day. And I think that we should continue to strive toward that without really thinking about whether we belong or not belong. So I think we should always just go into it and talk less and less about whether we belong or whether it's an industry that isn't for women. Because I think more and more women get nervous if they keep hearing that, because then they think, oh, maybe it's not for us, but it is for us. If you love it, then it's for you. Do it.
Karin, I feel like V's advice can be applied to so many things. If you love it, do it.
Yes.
Don't worry about questioning, do you belong? Walk with the authority that you do, and that you're going to make the most of the situation that you are in. August is National Black Business Month.
Yes.
And although this is not the first year that that's been recognized, this year feels particularly different given all the challenges that so many people are facing around things like diversity in a sector. Why should we talk about Black Business Month? Why don't we just talk about business? And I think both of you have made it clear that, yes, this is a part of our identity. It is not the only thing, but we can affirm that and continue to walk forward. When you think about the work that you do as a business owner, as an entrepreneur who is serving community, and particularly for Bridgeport, that I think is often overlooked and underserved. We can talk about the reasons on a whole nother show, right? But serving community. What do you say when people question, why do we need to observe National Black Business Month? What do you say?
Well, one, again, representation matters. And had it not been for me seeing Zuri's bookstore, when I was in my early 20s, I probably wouldn't have Kindred Thoughts Bookstore now in my 50s. And I say in my 50s because sometimes we think we're too old to start something new as well. And we're not, because actually the experience lends itself to, make up some of those deficits that you have in that particular industry, right? So you may not know the specifics of the industry, but you still know business and you still have life experience to help you navigate that. And then the other thing I would say is we have to fill voids, and we have to show, one, that we're capable, and we are. There isn't anything that we can't do if we put our minds to it, right? And I always tell people, everything that you need to learn, you actually learn in a book, right? When you go to school, they give you a book. So, back in my day, it was a tangible physical book. Now it might be online, but the bottom line is that somebody wrote down instruction for you to learn and to follow. And so books are essential. And so, for me, in terms of the bookstore, where it's like, okay, is this a dying industry? No, it's not. Because again, books are so essential. So in the era of AI, where, things are kind of, you can speak into the phone everything is presented to you, if people know what AI is about, you know that it's actually pulling from something that was already pre-formatted for AI to leverage, right? So that's written materials. It's pulling from that. So again, I think, for us as Black people, we need to be able to see ourselves in our community. We need to be able to invest in our community. We should be, walking our community. We should be walking our children around our community and getting to know who our proprietors are and letting them see that, these are things that you can aspire to be. And many of us, of a certain generation had that very start. V, had it with her family. I had it in my community, and we need to make sure that we pass that along to our children as well.
Mm-hmm. V, let me ask you a slightly different turn on that, because I do think it's important. Representation matters. And not just being able to see yourself, but to understand the ways that you are creating spaces for other people to pursue their vision and their dream. I know that you have been very intentional in your company of making sure that you are connected to community, that you are creating opportunities for other people to pursue their interest and their passion the ways that you have. When you think about what you have already built and what we know you will continue to build, what would you say is the legacy that when people think about you, think about your company? What's the legacy that you want them to know?
I would want them to know that this is a woman that loved to follow her passion, and she was in this space that was extremely unique for her representation. But there's all of this that she built a great team to accomplish, and she was Black and she was a woman. And if other Blacks and women can see themselves in my shoes and know that it is possible and that somebody actually did do that and they want to do it, then it's okay. And I also want them to know that, like anything else, right? Karin talked about your challenges. Challenges will come. I think one of the things that people don't realize is that we tend to sometimes want to wait until everything is perfect. Mm-hmm. And I always say it will never be perfect. Mm-hmm. If you want to start today, it's going to take you some time to learn. If you want to start next year, it's going to take you some time. Mm-hmm. So just do it and just don't even worry about it. Yes, proceed with caution. Mm-hmm. But I think at some point, maybe a few years ago, I made a decision that if I wanted to do something in this space, I was not going to think about it. The minute I felt like I wanted to do that, I'll get into that space. I'm going to go for it. I remember the first time that we were given the opportunity to work in a hospital. I said to the agency, I've not managed hospitals before. Are you sure? Mm-hmm. Because I didn't even think that I wanted to manage a hospital, because they reached out to me. And they said, no, we understand that you are good at managing construction projects, and the hospital is the same. Mm-hmm. So I remember getting our first project and not even telling my staff that I'm terrified about this. But I don't say it because I knew I wanted to do it. Now I could wait and say, let's figure out all the ways that we can get prepared for it. But a big part of me says, let's do it. And we went in extremely caution, and I'm going to assume we did a great job because we keep getting work in the hospital space. So I think one of the legacies I would love to leave is that any space that you go into, in my experience, a construction space, there's always going to be challenges, but I want people to know that I always went into it anyway. With caution, without a doubt. I don't hesitate. Once I make up my mind, I don't look back. I go forward. Now, I say to people, they said, you have business partners. My staff members are. Yes, I do have the company 100%, but My full-time staff are my partners because they bring so much experience. I want people to also know that we have a great team. I don't do it alone. Nobody, in my country, they say it takes a village. We have this new celebration in our office where whenever we finish a project, if we can remember, because we do so many projects, whenever we finish a project, if we can remember, we pop a champagne. Because we are so much into going on to the next, and not celebrating what we've done already. So we have champagnes in the office all the time just to celebrate. But we finish so many work all the time, we forget sometimes. But I want the legacy to know that we went after what we wanted to do. We built a great team, and we have been blessed enough to have the right clients come to us. Because that's also another thing. You have to not only believe in what you're doing, but you have to believe and pray that you have the right clients that reach out to you and that you can build a community together. You can build a project together. So the legacy is that we did something that it seems as though it was extraordinary to the average person, but the team that is all involved worked hard every single day, and we continue to do that.
It's a powerful legacy. It's one that I think is inspiring for so many of us to remember that we should go forward boldly, even when we're scared or uncertain, but to walk forward in partnership and collaboration with others, and to always remember to lift up those wins so we don't just move to the next, but we appreciate where we are. Adusei is owner and founder of VASE Construction, based in New Haven. And Karin Smith is co-owner of Kindred Thoughts Bookstore. It's an independent, Black-owned bookstore in Bridgeport. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Coming up, a real estate developer shares what he's learned from failure. This is Disrupted. Stay with us. Welcome back to Disrupted. I'm Kalila Brown-Dean. This hour, we're talking with local Black entrepreneurs in honor of National Black Business Month. Yves Joseph is CEO and co-founder of RJ Development. It's a real estate development firm based in New Haven. Yves joins us to talk about his career journey, but also the value of building capital as an entrepreneur. Yves, it's great to have you on Disrupted.
Bless you, dear. Very happy to be here. Thanks for this.
So let me start with this really basic question. When we say real estate development, what does that mean?
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, thank you for that question, Kalila. When I started my career and I said I wanted to be a real estate developer, people would always say, oh, you're going to sell houses, which is a tremendous profession in of itself. But development is a little different, a little more nuanced, at least the way that we approach it. And so specifically, real estate development for us is investing capital into unimproved real estate to improve that real estate with the objective of creating value. And so typically that looks like either a piece of ground and building that we will demolish or a piece of ground with no structure on it, and us working to design, approve, construct, deliver a structure that can be occupied by tenants.
So real estate development requires a lot of imagination, right? Being able to see things that aren't right in front of you, but to also commit to making that a reality. It's not the thing that most young kids, when they are 6 or 7, say, I want to be a real estate developer when I grow up. They want to be like a firefighter or a football player. What was it for you? Was there a moment when you said, this is the thing that speaks to me and what I'm passionate about?
Yeah, there's no doubt. So I'm from Chicago. I think you asked me that offline here. And I grew up around the skyline of downtown. Would always go downtown to enjoy and eat the wonderful food of Chicago, enjoy the lake. And then in my college years, I interned downtown. And I'll never forget taking the Red Line into downtown Chicago, walking into my office. I look up at the John Hancock building. It's an overcast day, and that building disappears into the clouds. And a question was put inside of me of how does that building materialize? Who's responsible? What group of people are responsible for making this happen, right? We know how trees grow, sun, water, time. But how do these edifices, these structures come to be? And that question was really put inside of me, and I've really been running at it ever since. So I got to give props to my hometown for putting that inspiration in me.
All of that imagination requires, as you said, a lot of capital to be able to do that. We hear from a lot of entrepreneurs about the difficulty of getting access to capital, or people questioning whether you can handle that level of capital. How important has that been for you in your own professional journey of saying, I'm going to walk with the confidence of knowing that I can do this and I can figure it out, even if my vision is greater than other people's limitations?
Yeah, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be in the position that we're in. We think it is it's been well earned, kind of hard fought for. Certainly, real estate it's known as an extraordinarily capital intensive business, right? We're investing, tens and at this point hundreds of millions of dollars in any one transaction, and so it's taken time. One of the things that I'm always thoughtful of is the privilege that we've had to be able to be patient. We've been able to kind of withstand time and, exist as a going concern for, years, more than 10, actually starting to become multiple decades. And that consistency is really the bedrock that gives investors confidence, I think, in saying, this is a bet that I can make. This is a group that I could collaborate with. So I don't take it for granted. I really kind of think and I'm grateful for kind of being able to build that flexibility for ourselves. But certainly it's been paramount. And we even continue to trade on it to this day, right? People can say, hey, RJ has done this and that, right? But it's taken time to build that track record. And it's hard to be able to invest that time when you're not necessarily just starting from the blocks with a lot of, surplus capital or reserves.
I love that phrase, the privilege of being patient, because I think we live in a society where sometimes we don't feel like we can be patient. There's this urgency, whether it's real or imagined, those pressures are overwhelming for some people. What do you say to entrepreneurs who are just starting out, who may not have yet built that privilege or yet built that trust and that track record? What do you say to them of like, look, Yves, that's great that you can do it, but I need this right now? What's your message?
Yeah, I mean, just never forget how to hustle. It kind of goes back to the foundations. One of my early mentors was Jair Lynch. Jair is a really prolific developer in Washington, D.C., kind of like a big brother to me. And when I was first starting my business with Jason, I asked Jair, I said, Jair, man, you've really set the gold standard for creating a business that we want to model and embody. Kind of how did you do it? What are the secrets that you could share? And Jair said to me, every time you make any money, don't spend it. Find a way to build it, to invest it, and get another contract, get another advisory deal, consult, do whatever you need to do to pay your bills. But when you make capital, utilize that capital, leverage that capital to grow that capital. And so that's kind of what I try to pass down to starting entrepreneurs who are in their beginning stages, is just that mindset of frugality and realizing that capital is precious, particularly in the beginning of your journey. And so be a tremendous steward of that capital. Because as you grow it, it's almost magnetic, right? By growing your own capital base, it'll allow you to attract others and solve some of those issues and problems that require that patience to kind of get to.
We are having this conversation during August, which is National Black Business Month. We are having it at a time when many people are questioning, well, why do we need to talk about Black business? Why do we need to talk about the challenges that Black entrepreneurs in particular face? What do you say in response to that, of why do we need to keep thinking about Black business, Black entrepreneurship?
Well, I mean, I think entrepreneurship is an ecosystem, and ecosystems and individuals operating in ecosystems can't mature and evolve and develop in a vacuum. So there's got to be a mutual kind of reinforcement. And all entrepreneurs, including especially Black entrepreneurs, need to be supported, encouraged, welcomed, invited, nurtured, and invested in as a part of that ecosystem. So to me, I like to talk about it just to kind of remind folks that, this is an important part of the community that is contributing, that is capable, that has capacity. And we as a larger body, state, municipal apparatus need to invest in growing that capacity to be our true greatest and best selves.
One of the challenges for Connecticut as an aging state is that people often have this idea that we need to go chase external in order to think about the future of the state. And one of the things that I appreciate about the work that you do, the way that you do that work, is that you have been so committed to investing in community right where we are, to helping people see what's possible for them, and to be able to take some risk in doing that. And in taking risks, there's often lessons that come with that. I'm curious what you would say, Yves, is maybe the most difficult lesson that you've learned in your journey, but the one that stays with you as you continue to chart new paths. What would that be?
I think we always try to remember why we're here. And it's not always easy. People are not always going to say thank you. And you kind of have to remember that it's not about thank you, right? It's not about waiting for accolades or acknowledgement or praise or, gratitudes, what have you. It has to be about the work. And so the biggest lesson is that when we have been most true to the work, when we have really focused on really delivering excellence and driving value for the populations that we're serving, we have been the most fulfilled. And over the longer arc of time, even in investing, we have been the most successful. So trying not to become short-term biased, short-term focused, trying not to pursue instant gratification, and to understand and appreciate that there's a much bigger goal, bigger objective that we're responsible to deliver to. That's been the greatest lesson that I try to hold on to because it's almost like a North Star.
I know this is probably like asking you who's the favorite child, so I want to apologize in advance. But is there a project of the many that you work on and that you worked on that stands out to you as the one that is particularly meaningful or particularly aligned with your North Star and your purpose?
The next one, to be perfect.
Good answer.
To be perfectly frank, we put our blood, sweat, and tears into these projects. We consider these opportunities to transform communities a responsibility, and so we would not be doing our job if we're not giving our full, undivided attention when we're bestowed with these responsibilities by communities and cities and towns. So it really, truly is the next one. We're always trying to make the next one bigger and better, more impactful, and the next one should also embody all of the lessons that we've learned through all the previous ones. But I'd be remiss not to just give a little shout out to Cadence and Canal in New Haven, where we delivered 176 units, a third of which are affordable, in a neighborhood that has kind of been overlooked for many decades, a neighborhood that's been trying to kind of be lifted since well before my time in New Haven. And so to be able to deliver that and deliver it in a way that's mission aligned, that I think really resonates with the community and the city, we're proud of that. We're very proud of that because it was a very tough lift. And to kind of stand at the top of that one and say, hooray, we can celebrate for a moment was rewarding.
I wonder if you could talk a little more about the toughness of that lift, because I think people will see the outcome of a project and not always know what it takes to get there. So whether the getting there is the skepticism of community, whether it is the skepticism of, is this the right time for a particular project or a commitment, what made that lift a challenge for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple aspects to it, just to dovetail on a prior comment you made. Capital is a challenge, right? It's hard enough to attract capital to great deals, right? And so when you start to add, call it bells and whistles, and you kind of complicate the business plan of a transaction, it makes that more difficult. And so, when we decided that we were going to work with the city to deliver a mixed income neighborhood without federal tax credits, the challenge that we took on to assemble that capital structure was legion. It was substantial. And we were very fortunate and blessed to have been able to ally with tremendous capital partners who've made it happen. But again, it goes back to, that track record, that proof of concept, that staying power, and also some ingenuity. I give the team some credit for being novel and coming up with some new solutions. But that was extremely, extremely difficult. And it's also a public-private partnership, right? When you're talking about building on city-owned lands, that in and of itself has its own complexities because there are many stakeholders that a city must represent, must consider when they're determining how to execute a project of this importance and scale, what restrictions will be placed on it, what parameters they'll require a developer to navigate. And so all that translates to time, agita headaches, frustrations, disappointments. But I just believe perseverance really will overcome kind of all those things. And so really proud of us that we've been able to stay focused, to stay kind of committed and invested and see this one through, 13, 14, 15 years later.
We have younger listeners who will listen to our conversations with guests. And sometimes they'll reach out to say, I didn't know about that field, or I didn't know about that person. Or we'll hear from grandparents who'll say, oh, I heard this in the car, and then I had a different conversation with the young person in my life. What do you say to young people who may listen to this episode, who will listen to you, your experience and your journey, and may have that inkling of maybe I, too, could become a real estate developer or an entrepreneur or take a risk in my dream, but I may not really know how? What would you say to young people?
Yeah, I say be convicted in your passion, be confident in yourself. When you pursue something bigger than yourself, something challenging, something audacious, by definition, it will not be easy. Right. And so a lot of times people say, I want to do this thing. And the minute it gets tough, it's kind of easy to just fold up and say, wow, it was just not meant for me. But the toughness is actually what makes the success. Almost a stubborn persistence, right? Just being unwilling to give up, unwilling to relent, unwilling to fail. That's what I would give to the young people, is to say, find something you really believe in, find something you're truly and deeply passionate about, and be unwilling to let it go. Be totally open to failure, because failure is what teaches the lessons. Failure is what reveals the truths. And by moving through the failures, you're moving towards the success, right? It's a part of the journey. And I think a lot of times we're not aware of that. And we think that the failure is the definition, when really it's just part of the story.
What has failure taught you throughout your journey?
What has failure taught me? It's probably taught me everything. Because, the lessons that I hold on to the closest and the tightest are the ones that hurt the most. But failure has taught me that it's not the end, right? Because we have had that stubbornness. We have persevered. We've overcome a lot of it. I'm sure there's plenty more to come, to be perfectly frank, because we do have some things that we'd like to accomplish in this life, in this time. But failure has taught me that it's not the end.
I think one of the lessons from entrepreneurs is, as you said, seeing failure as a part of the journey. And I think sometimes we work so hard to insulate young people from failure that we don't have that opportunity for them to learn. And the ways that you see failure as a part of the learning process, as a part of the growth, uncomfortable at times, but also seeing it lead to this greater purpose, is, I think, we need to hear more of that and to be reminded that there can be purpose in what we do. Yves Joseph is CEO and co-founder of RJ Development and Advisors. Thank you, Yves.
Thank you, Kalila.
For more of Connecticut Public's coverage of National Black Business Month, you can visit ctpublic.org/Black Voices. Disrupted is produced by Kevin Chang Barnum, Robin Doyon-Aiken, Erica McIntosh, and Meg Fitzgerald. And you can listen to all the previous episodes of Disrupted by finding us wherever you get your podcast. And you can listen for new episodes every Friday at 9 a.m. From Connecticut Public Radio, this is Disrupted. I'm Kalila Brown-Dean. Thanks for listening.